He walked into the room confident. He had rehearsed every argument, polished every slide, anticipated every objection, or so he thought. Halfway through the negotiation, everything shifted. Suddenly, the questions weren't matching the flow he had prepared for. The offers were coming faster, tighter, more precise, and every time he thought he was pushing forward, it was as if they already knew how he'd respond. Because they did. They had information he didn't. They knew about the internal debate happening on his side. They knew about the pressure he was under. They knew the timeline he couldn't afford to miss. They weren't guessing. They were playing with knowledge he didn't even realize he had exposed. And by the time he understood it, the deal was already lost. That was the moment he realized in leadership, the real advantage isn't about charisma. It's not about effort. It's not even about expertise. It's about knowing first. It's about having better information sooner than the people you're negotiating with, competing with, collaborating with. Because in the real game, decisions aren't just made based on what's visible, they're made based on what's known quietly behind the scenes. And those who know first, they don't just respond faster, they move smarter. They influence outcomes before anyone else even realizes there's a decision to be made. Today, we're going to talk about that hidden layer of leadership, the invisible power that doesn't scream for attention, but shapes everything beneath the surface. Because in the end, it's not the strongest that dominate the game. It's the ones who see the board first. And once you understand that, you'll never lead the same way again. We love the story of hard work. We celebrate hustle. We honor late nights and endless effort. We tell ourselves that if we work harder than everyone else, we'll win. But here's the brutal truth: hard work alone does not guarantee success, not in leadership, not in negotiation, not in the real world arenas where outcomes are shaped long before the public sees them. Because effort is visible, information is invisible, and the invisible always shapes the visible. You can be the smartest, hardest working person in the room and still lose to someone who simply knew something you didn't, not because they worked harder, but because they were positioned better. They understood the dynamics you didn't see. They anticipated the shifts you didn't expect. They shaped their moves not just by what they could control, but by what they knew was already happening in spaces you hadn't even entered. I've seen entire companies blindsided by competitors who had early access to information they didn't think mattered until it did. Market trends, customer sentiment shifts, regulatory conversations, talent movements, tiny pieces of information. That changed the whole game when used correctly. And by the time the hard workers caught up, the opportunity wasn't just gone. The opportunity had been weaponized against them because hard work is reactive. Information is anticipatory. Hard work says, I will adapt to whatever happens. Information says, I will shape what happens. And leaders who understand that difference operate on another level. They don't just execute better, they position better. They don't wait to be surprised. They move while everyone else is still trying to understand what's going on. So if you've been pouring all your energy into working harder, grinding longer, pushing faster, pause and ask yourself, am I working harder or am I positioning smarter? Because the ones who move the game aren't always the ones sweating the most. They're the ones who know first and move accordingly. Information isn't just an asset, it's leverage. It's the silent weight behind every move that looks effortless from the outside. Because when you have better information before your competitors, your counterparts, your challengers, you don't have to work harder. You work smarter. You don't have to guess. You know, you don't have to react. You shape. Information allows you to strike when others are still asking questions. It lets you position yourself before the crowd even realizes there's a race. It empowers you to speak last and win because you were listening when others were busy talking. I've seen leaders close $1 million deals not because they outtalked or outworked the competition, but because they knew about the client's hidden priority no one else caught. I've seen businesses outmaneuver giants not with bigger budgets, but with sharper intelligence about shifting customer needs before the big players even noticed. And I've seen teams collapse, not because they lacked talent, but because they were making moves based on yesterday's assumptions, while their competitors were moving with tomorrow's knowledge. Information isn't just a tool you use, it's a force that amplifies everything you already bring to the table: your instincts, your strategies, your timing, but only if you know how to gather it, read it, and act before others can. Because here's the truth: in every high stakes environment, there's a second conversation happening underneath the surface, the one visible to those who have better information, the one invisible to those who are still relying on effort alone. And if you're not actively building your informational advantage, you're playing a game you can't win. Because leadership isn't about working with what's obvious, it's about operating where the invisible currents move first. And once you learn to live in that layer, you stop competing for opportunities. You start creating them before anyone else even knows they exist. The most dangerous disadvantage in leadership isn't the one you can see, it's the one you can't. It's thinking you're in control when you're actually operating blind, because informational blindness doesn't feel like ignorance. It feels like frustration. It feels like confusion. It feels like the ground keeps shifting under your feet and you can't figure out why. And the longer you ignore those feelings, the deeper the disadvantage grows. So, how do you recognize when you're operating without the information you need? First, look for pattern disruption. When the conversations start shifting without explanation, when the usual timelines accelerate or stall without clear reason, when people's body language tightens even though their words sound the same. Second, watch for unexpected timing. When competitors move earlier than expected, when a client brings up concerns you hadn't heard whispers about, when a partner suddenly changes terms without warning, those are signs that someone else had information before you and adjusted while you were still preparing to move. Third, notice your own emotional markers. Are you constantly in reactive mode? Are you making decisions under pressure rather than positioning with calm? Do you feel like you're always catching up rather than leading the pace? Those feelings aren't just personal struggles, they're strategic signals. They're telling you you're playing a game where someone else sees more of the board than you do. And in leadership, perception is positioning. The one who sees more sooner plays better, always. It's not about blaming yourself. It's not about panicking. It's about realizing if you don't feel strategically calm, it's probably because you're operating with incomplete information. And the next step isn't to work harder, it's to see better. Because once you recognize you're blind, you can start moving differently. You can start asking better questions, building deeper listening channels, positioning yourself to catch the shifts before they become shocks. Because great leaders aren't just smarter or stronger, they're better informed, and they know it before the game even begins. Waiting for information to come to you is a losing game. If you want to lead at a higher level, you have to build your own intelligence system, a way of gathering signals, of seeing patterns, of knowing sooner so you can move smarter. Because in a fast shifting world, whoever knows first, not whoever works hardest, creates the future. So, how do you build it? First, prioritize relationships over reports. Information rarely travels the fastest through official channels. It moves through trust, the informal conversation after the meeting, the quick exchange that isn't documented, the quiet signal someone sends when they believe you're the leader who will listen. If you're only reading formal updates, you're late. You need to be connected to the informal flow. Second, sharpen your pattern recognition. Every environment has rhythms: markets Teams, competitors, clients, everyone moves according to patterns, even if they don't realize it. Train yourself to notice what's changing subtly, what's repeating more often, what seems off but hasn't been named yet. Early detection of pattern shifts gives you massive positioning power. Third, master strategic listening. Don't just listen for facts, listen for hesitations, listen for emphasis, listen for what's missing in what people say. The gaps often tell you more than the content. Fourth, create multiple channels of insight. Don't rely on one person. Don't rely on one data source. Diversify where and how you gather information. That way, when different sources align, you know it's time to act. And when they don't, you know it's time to investigate deeper. Building an intelligent system isn't glamorous, it's quiet, it's relational, it's persistent. But once you have it, you stop being surprised. You start being strategic. You don't wait for the future to crash into you. You read its early signals and you move while others are still explaining why they didn't see it coming. Because leadership is not just about vision, it's about information flow. And when you build your own system, you don't just react to the game, you reshape it. Information is powerful, but power means nothing if you don't know when to use it. Because leadership isn't just about knowing more, it's about moving at the right moment. Sometimes the information you gather demands immediate action. A competitor is about to move, a market is shifting, an opportunity is opening, but only for those who move now. In those moments, speed is everything, decisiveness is your weapon. You don't wait to perfect your plan. You move with what you know. You seize the momentum before it evaporates. The leaders who win these moments aren't reckless, they're ready. They've been watching, listening, preparing. So when the signal comes, they're already leaning forward. But sometimes knowing is a signal to wait. Sometimes the smartest move is to stay still just a little longer. When others are panicking, reacting, scrambling to adjust, you stay steady because you know the early chaos is just noise, because you know more clarity is coming, because you know that the first wave of action isn't the real opportunity, the second wave is. The greatest leaders don't just move fast, they move right. They understand the difference between reacting out of urgency and responding out of insight. They know that information isn't just for immediate decisions, it's for strategic timing. It tells you when to attack, when to defend, when to stay silent, when to strike, and most importantly, when to let everyone else burn themselves out while you gather strength for the move that truly matters. The ones who win are not the ones moving first. They're the ones moving best with the clearest information at the sharpest moment for the maximum impact. So when you have the advantage of knowing before others do, respect it. Don't rush it. Use it with the wisdom to move only when the move serves the mission. Because sometimes your strength isn't just that it's that you know and wait until it matters most. Leadership isn't just about being bold, it's about being early. It's about seeing before others see, moving before others move, shaping outcomes before the world even realizes they were in play. Because the future doesn't belong to the ones who work the hardest, it belongs to the ones who know first and move smarter because of it. The ones who build invisible networks of intelligence while others chase headlines, the ones who notice the small shifts while others obsess over the obvious ones, the ones who understand that leverage is created long before anyone else knows a decision is even on the table. And here's the truth: you don't need to be the loudest, you don't need to be the biggest, you don't need to have every advantage today. You just need to see one move ahead before they do. And when you do, you stop playing their game. You start writing your own. So here's your challenge: stop waiting for information to land in your lap. Start building the systems that give you early sight. Start asking better questions, listening between the lines, observing what others overlook, because the leader who knows first doesn't have to fight harder. They simply move differently, and by the time the rest of the world catches up, you'll already be exactly where you intended to be: positioned, prepared, powerful. Not because you moved faster by chance, but because you saw the move before anyone else even knew it was there.